Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living TV. Today I have a very special guest, Mary O'Malley. She's the author of What's in the Way is the Way and numerous other books. We'll be talking about her life and all that she's contributing to the world of service and all the great information. She's getting acclaim, attention, and praise from many different other fellow authors of wisdom teachers, such as Donald Neil Walsh, Stephen Levine, and many others. I'm so very, very pleased to have her come via Skype. Thank you. And let's take a moment to look at this video clip.
Hello, my name is Mary O'Malley. I'm an author and a counselor in private practice in Kirkland, Washington. And I am delighted to share with you about my latest book called What's in the Way is the Way. To get a sense of what this book is about, I want to share with you a really wonderful quote by the beloved mythologist Joseph Campbell, where he says, "People say that what we're searching for is the meaning to life. I don't think that's what we're searching for at all. What we're searching for is the experience of being alive, so that our experiences on the physical plane resonate in our very innermost being, and we again know the rapture of being alive." Most of us don't know the rapture of being alive. Most of us live in a constant low-grade struggle, trying to do life and do it right. It wasn't always that way. When we were very young, we were wide open to life. There were no thoughts in our head. There was no self-image yet. And then slowly and surely a self-image began to develop. And we pulled ourselves up and out of our bodies, and we got caught in our heads. And they say we have 65,000 thoughts a day, and 95% of them are repeats from the day before. How I describe this is with a metaphor in the first chapter called the Meadow Metaphor. Imagine a beautiful meadow. Everything flows in the meadow. The flowers appear and then they disappear, and winter comes and then spring comes, and the water flows from the mountain and the wind flows. There's nothing in this meadow that resists the flow of life. And yes, there is death, there is loss, there is violence, but there is no resistance. The fir tree doesn't wish it was the maple tree. The plants don't resist the coming of winter. This is the meadow where you and I lived. But imagine all those clouds in the sky, slowly and surely coming down, getting lower and lower, and then beginning to whirl and swirl around your head as a child. And slowly and surely, your experience of the meadow is blocked because you pay attention to just the thoughts in your head. I call it in the book the storyteller in your head that tells all sorts of stories all day long. And if you had a little door in the front of your forehead, you would open up and watch a ticker tape, you would see how much it likes this, but it doesn't like that. It wants this, but it doesn't want that. And that is the world of struggle that we have all crawled into. Many of the struggles are very minor, like a spot on our shirt or the length of the stoplight, but there are other bigger struggles. But the truth of it is there are no problems in your life except in your mind. Yes, there are challenges, but there are no problems. So in this book, we look about how to rediscover the meadow again, the joy of being alive. And it isn't from trying to get back to the meadow. That's more struggle. It's about learning how to see and dissolve with your own living attention your cloud bank of struggle, so that then the meadow is revealed to you and you again know the joy of being alive. So in chapter 2, we look at what is it like to live from the meadow, the flow, the ease, the spaciousness, the delight. And then we begin to get familiar with the cloud bank of struggle. And so in the 3rd chapter, we look at how it is based on fear. And fear is nothing to be afraid of, and yet we are always trying to manage our own fear. This chapter is how you can see fear, how you can get to know your fears, so that you can move from I am so afraid to, oh, this is the story of fear. In the 4th chapter, we look at something that's very, very important, and that is to know you're never alone. In your cloud bank of struggle, you do feel very alone. And yet the intelligence at the heart of life is keeping pace with you every step of the way in your life. In chapter 5, we begin to develop the most important tool that a human being has, and that is their own curiosity. And in chapter 6, we look about how you can take this curiosity into your daily life. Curiosity doesn't fight with anything. Curiosity gets to know what is going on. And then in chapter 7, we bring it all into the heart. For the heart is where all true healing happens. We all had such an innocent, beautiful heart when we were born. And then slowly and surely it had to shut down as we ran away to a conceptual world. And this chapter is how to open that heart again, and how to combine curiosity and your heart together into what I call compassionate curiosity. Chapter 8 is about stories of people that are living their life in this way, and how compassionate curiosity dissolves their own cloud bank so that they can come back to the joy of being alive. In chapter 9, we get into the heart of it, and that is that your life is for you. This is where the title of the book is. What's in the way is the way. In your whole life, there's only one of two experiences you're having. One, life is inviting you into this living moment with everything that you long for that is right here. Or it's giving you experiences to help you see your own cloud bank so you can dissolve it with your compassionate curiosity. And so this is where the subtitle of the book comes into play. The transforming power of trusting your life, all of it. As you read this chapter, you will no longer be a victim to your life. You will know that your life is happening for you. In chapter 10, we'll take a look at 4 steps that you can bring into your life that will help you remember this. Everything that we have explored together, no matter what is happening in your life. And in chapter 11, you will discover that you are being given this gift of healing your cloud bank, not only for yourself, but for the world, because you are a part of this world. And as you clear your own cloud bank, you become a healing presence in the world. There's a wonderful thing about this book. It isn't about just taking in all of this information. All the way through the book, you are invited to pause and really truly open to life right here, right now. And at the end of each chapter is what I call a remembering session, where you're invited for at least 5 minutes every day to develop compassion and curiosity so that you too can dissolve your cloud bank and come back to life. So if this intrigues you, you can find out more about the book and other books and CDs that I offer at my website, maryo'malley.com. And there will be also information about a free webinar I'll be doing on the book, and also a 12-week class so we can walk through the book together. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being willing to heal your own cloud bank so that our world may be healed. Namaste.
Welcome, Mary. How are you today?
Oh, I am wonderful, and I'm so excited to be exploring with you, Victoria.
Well, thank you. So let's start from the very beginning of your life. Years ago, you were having a life, to say the least. You were having a lot of problems, which brought you to your self-realization and the work that you do today. It all started there. And this was actually what was in the way at that time. So
Exactly.
let's explore that. What exactly happened to you?
Well, I was raised in a truly unconscious family, and when people are unconscious, they do very strange and weird things. And, rather than going into it all, I would say I would not wish my childhood on anybody. And I really began when I was about 10 to start numbing myself with food, and discovered diet pills and would gain weight and lose weight and gain weight and lose weight. And then I went to college and I added alcohol into the mix. And then when I left college, I added street drugs into the mix. And of course, the whole long while I was also doing prescription drugs. I was trying to get as far away as I could from what I was experiencing. Because when we're young and we live, and so many of us live in unconscious families, our parents may even have loved us, but they didn't know how to connect with us. So we take on these wounds of not being enough, and life not being safe, and the experience of being separate and all alone. As I say in the new book, these are all spells, but we live them, and I lived them. And when I was 23, I gained 97 pounds in a year as I was washing most of it down with alcohol and taking every drug I could get my hands on. And when that didn't work, the next year I tried to kill myself 3 times. And the last time I slit my wrists, and that moment when I realized that it wasn't working, that I felt like such a failure at even suicide, I asked my first, what I call open-ended question. I didn't realize it until years later, but I asked life, if I can't get out of this, what is this all about? And shortly thereafter, my life began to change. Teachers began to come into my life. Teachers that taught me that there was nothing wrong with me. There was nothing that needed to be fixed. Oh my God, I've been trying to fix myself and everybody else, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the hospitals, the hypnotherapists. They have been all trying to fix me. And my first teacher taught me one of the core aspects of consciousness. In the seeing is the movement. And that's when things began to open up again. I began to move out of the fact that I was a problem and into really true fascination about what really was going on right now in my head, in my body, in my heart. And slowly and surely, I found my way out of the maze, especially when I had the good grace to spend a fair amount of time with Stephen Levine, who has written many books on death and dying, but really, truly, he wrote about how to be fully alive. And he was the human being that showed me how to open my very closed heart and how to meet every single part of myself in my own heart. Then we're whole. Then we can show up for this great dance of life. We don't have to try to do it. We can be it.
Mary, let's stay, thank you for that. Let's stay for a moment with the pain that was happening years ago, because there's many viewers that are in a lot of pain. They're in depression, they're in
Yes.
anxiety, let's give them more of a glimpse of exactly how serious and deep your pain was at that time. You attempted suicide a number of times and you ended up in mental institutions.
Oh, two mental hospitals,
Okay,
yes.
so let's speak about that. Let's stay with that just for a moment so other people can feel and relate to what is actually going on with themselves and what's actually happened to you at that time and how deep and intense the pain was within you.
Yeah, so much so that I didn't want to live anymore. And a lot of that was the core of that, all those experiences was helpless, hopeless despair. And I call it the no way out place. And all of us experience it, oftentimes in the middle of the night or the death of a loved one or a cancer diagnosis. You know, everything inside of us contracts. And the way I like to describe my childhood is that I lived in a completely sealed phone booth with the water constantly rising. It would rise and it would go back down again and rise and go back down again. I lived mainly in the experience of dread. And dread is the experience of great terror about what is going to come, and also with a sense that it is here because I have done something wrong. And so I imploded. The only option was to kill myself. But then life began to say, let's be curious. Let's watch what's going on. Let's begin to listen to what is going on inside of us. And I've worked with people for 30 years, and I've worked with people, you know, all the way from psychotic breaks to, you know, just everyday garden variety depression to people that literally could not stop eating, not stop drinking, stop smoking. And it is just magic to begin to lift people out of this old system that says there's something wrong with me and there's something wrong with how I've been taking care of myself, and thus that has to be fixed. That's the endless game of this conditioned, separate self that we all crawl into.
Mary,
But
what was the
we're
pivotal
not.
moment when you had that realization that you were not part of the problem and you were not going to react to what was happening to you? What was the pivotal moment? What actually was happening to you at that moment?
Well, I think it's more so like, you know, when the sun rises,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it just doesn't pop up. You know, it's the title of one of Stephen's books, A Gradual Awakening. There was a moment where I'd been fasting for 2 weeks and I came home and I lived on a little lagoon in a lake, and I was sitting down right by the lake, and all of a sudden everything opened up and I saw the love that is
You had
who we really are.
a mere glimpse of it.
A glimpse of it, but then it shut back down again. And I told Eckhart the last time he stayed with me, Eckhart told me, I said, you know, I'm a little envious. I wish I could wake up like you did, you know, like boom. And he said, well, most people won't, and they need guides. So that's what you are, Mary, is a guide through this maze that we took on. And then shortly thereafter, my first teacher, Joel Kramer, who was one of the first people to really bring yoga to the West, he taught me in the seeing is the movement. There's nothing that needs to be fixed, changed, rearranged. And I say this over and over again in my retreats and in my groups. The healing we're ready for doesn't come from changing anything. It comes from the ability to see and be with what is.
And this is a major difference of
Yes.
way of looking at it. Most people for the last decades and the way of thinking is to remove what is the problem. But your thinking, your strategy, and the beauty of it becomes so effortless. It becomes effortless because you're embracing what is the problem. You're not trying to get rid of a problem or fix up a problem.
Yes.
You're using what is to speak to you on deep levels to
Yes.
heal it and to
Yes.
yes. So
And look at my life, Victoria. I tried to go away. I tried everything to get away from my own experience. And then life taught me how to begin to go towards. And this is something that we need to learn. That's why there's a 10-week process that you can do in What's in the Way is the Way that will strengthen the muscle of your curiosity and open this vast healing region of your own heart. What we don't realize is that we're alchemists, that when we were very young, energy flowed through us just like it does in nature. We were free-flowing aliveness. And then as we received what I call our sacred wounds, abandonment and invasion when we were growing up, we start holding on. We start stashing deep inside of us the feelings that we don't know what to do with. We start holding on to our breath and we run away to our mind and we keep on trying to get to the healing we want, not realizing the healing that we long for is already here. And as we learn how to turn towards, we use the light of our attention to actually dissipate the bound up energy, like I did with dread. Now, it took a while for me to learn how to not be terrified of dread enough so that I could go give it the light of my attention. And it's just like the fog in the morning, the sun. It dissipates. We don't need to get rid of anything. With the light of our aware heart, we can free it back up into what it really is. Bound, it's joy. It got bound up inside of us. But the essence of this energy that shows up as knots in our stomach and elephants on our chest and lumps in our throats and headaches and tight jaws and aches in our neck and backaches, all of that is just bound up joy. And as we learn how to go towards, we open it back up again.
Well, let's speak about the beautiful metaphor of the meadow. And the meadow is where your life, your core essence and all of your beauty and the ease and the flow. And then the fog comes in. And this
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful metaphor. Let's speak about that.
Well, I love metaphors, Victoria. I really do, because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And what I am offering is, in a way, a new language. It is the language of the aware heart. You know, Eckhart says, let's be in the now. And I can't tell you how many people say, how do you do that? You know, well, you're already in the now. You don't have to try to get there. You have to learn how to see and dissolve what stands in the way. So that's why the metaphor is so powerful. In the meadow, everything flows. Light flows, sound flows, water flows, day flows into night, life into death, death into life. We lived in the meadow when we were very young. We were not separate from life. And then slowly and surely we began to take on this storyteller in our head. Deepak Chopra says we have 65,000 thoughts a day. And I add we have about 90% of them are repeats from the day before. So imagine that the clouds in the sky, they start lowering, and now they whirl and swirl around your head. One of the most important points of this metaphor is you've never left the meadow. You just think you have. And so I took on the cloud banks to the fullest that a human being could and still survive. And then life said, get curious about this cloud bank. And you begin to see that your light of your attention is like a laser beam. And it's the light of the aware heart. It's the kind of attention that doesn't need anything to be any different than what it is. And slowly and surely, the clouds begin to thin. And you begin to recognize that not only are you in the meadow, you have always been there, and you are the meadow itself.
How beautiful.
So that's why the title is What's in the Way is the Way.
Yes. And as the fog lifts, the fog is the reactive mind, the stories
Yes.
we tell, the hurts,
Yes.
the pain. And as the fog lifts, we are just simply there with our natural, beautiful, innate self.
Back to life, back to a direct experience of life. And as you look at this cloud bank all around you, you begin to see it's made out of fear. And it's glued together with judgment. And it always wants what is not here, and it doesn't want what is. That's why I call in my second book, The Gift of Our Compulsions, our core compulsion is to struggle. All the other compulsions are an attempt to numb out from that struggle that keeps us separate from the joy, the peace, the love that we really are.
Let's speak about these stories that we as humans tell ourselves. And we may have told these stories for our entire life, for decades. The
Yes.
same repetitive story goes on, and we get attached to that story that it's the only thing that is existing. Life is not existing, nothing else is happening but this story. This story becomes the absolute.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember or to recognize at one time there were no thoughts in your head. It's kind of like, oh my goodness. And slowly and surely, we started creating a self-image. I am a boy, I am a girl, my name is John, my name is Mary. And the key word there is image. Image is not the real thing. And when life is just, it really invades us and abandons us when we're young, because we were mostly raised by what I call unconscious giants that left themselves a long time ago, so they didn't know how to connect with us. So we learn how to hold our breath, tighten our body, and run away to this self-image, which I call the storyteller. And it is telling stories all day long. And one of the pieces, the core pieces of this book is the piece on spells. There are 8 core spells that we all take on. And if your listeners would like to have a list of the spells, if they're not interested in getting the book, just email me at awaken@maryo'malley.com and I'll have it sent out to you. Because I have been in groups and retreats for 30 years. I've done individual counseling and groups and phone groups and retreats and all that. So I've been able to see into the minds and hearts of tens of thousands of people. And we're all hurting. It's like Thoreau said, most men lead quiet lives of desperation. And those spells that are common that we all take on is, we're separate. Life is not safe. We've got to do life. We've got to do it right. And we're not doing it right enough. And thus, that leads to what I call the 3 hidden spells. That means that I am wrong. That means I am unlovable. And that means that I am all alone. Most people's, the story in their head are woven out of these spells that make up this cloud bank. And you can begin to understand. That's why in retreats or groups, it's so important. I create very safe places to be real. And people discover, oh my God, you feel the same thing. I thought I was the only person that felt that. And then more and more you begin to step back and see how this cloud bank is structured. And you see that most people are caught in the cloud bank, cut off from life.
What would you say to people who have many decades ago, some unfavorable event happened to them, some mental pain was inflicted on them, or some physical pain, and they are decades later still holding on to that story? Yes. They refuse to let it go because that actually happened to them.
Yes.
In Buddhists, they say that suffering is real, and pain is real. Sorry, pain is real, and suffering is optional.
Yeah. Suffering is the story about it. And we have been so trained to live just in the story. I love the quote from Alan Watts, the very well-known Zen philosopher. No matter how many times you say the word water, it will never be wet. We live in the word water. We long for the wetness of life. But yet each one of us are wounded. We're deeply wounded when we're young. I wish I had a time machine and I could take people back to, what it was like the day that your older brother stole your toy and then taunted you with it. And then you were just screaming and crying and you ran over and bit him. And at that moment, your mother came in the room, and who got spanked? It was you. I mean, we had all sorts of experiences like that, like a parent saying, oh, I've had it with you all. I'm going to go to the bar or something like that. And then the child is left home all alone with the sense of what's wrong with me. But in my world, this earth is a schoolroom. And each one of us take on some of this unconsciousness. Each one of us take on a cloud bank. And the more that you begin to look at your cloud bank, you begin to see something very, very important. That the wounds you received now can become the fuel for your awakening. That we could even take it so far as to say, ultimately, in the end, these wounds were for you. That takes you out of the victim mode, which keeps you caught in the storyteller. And believe you me, I was kidnapped and raped somewhere in there. My house burnt down to the ground, and along with my store with it. So I've had a lot of things happen to me that I experienced them as the pure victim. But slowly and surely, I began to realize they were happening for me, that they were a construct of the core wounds I took on that made up my cloud bank, and I could begin to become curious about them.
So in essence, the problems, the chaos, the misery in the life became your best teacher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's take compulsions. Oh my God, I gained and lost probably thousands of pounds. I'm a Taurus, so, I was very good at not eating. I once went a month without eating, and a couple of other times, 2 times, because by God, I was going to get this under control, and then I would gain back even more. And I had starved myself down when I was 22. And then when I was 23, I couldn't stop eating. And it was when I began to do this consciousness work that slowly and surely I began to become curious about my compulsions. The drugs and the alcohol had kind of faded away on their own, but eating was still there. It became one of my core teachers. And I'm very natural around food now. And one of the huge reasons why is because anytime a wave of compulsion came, I learned how to not turn it into the enemy. And I got curious. I realized that every single time a wave of compulsion came, it was showing me something. So I was no longer caught in this world of struggle with it that literally keeps you glued to it. In fact, the U.S. Surgeon General report says 98% of every pound that is gained back plus some within a year and a half. The plus some is the key. That as soon as we start fighting with what we are experiencing, blaming ourselves, blaming others, we are caught in that mass of clouds of spells. But as soon as we become curious, then what we are experiencing becomes our teacher, and it can bring you home. And that's my job, is to invite people into real, true curiosity. but the kind of curiosity that doesn't need anything to be any different than what it is. It's the curiosity of the awake heart.
For those who have been in therapy for many decades and in AA meetings and codependent meetings, and they're still lost in the victimhood, perhaps they're listening to you and I right now, and they can't even entertain the mere thought that they could let their story go. Do you think that there is a stubbornness there, or do you think they're just not ready, or what is going on with these people?
Well, the last time that we were fully open to life was when we were very young. There was no time. We just were here. And then the image I like is, imagine you've crawled into the kitchen and you have opened the cupboard and you've found these really interesting shiny things. We call them pots and pans and lids. Oh my God, this was a whole new universe. And you pull one out and you look at it and you pull another one out and you drop it and it makes this noise. Oh my goodness. And so you start hitting two things together and around the corner comes your mother yelling, "Stop that!" And feel that little bite. It's ripped out of its living experience, and then of course it dissolves in tears. And is it met? Not usually. It is blamed. Don't do that. You're not supposed to be in the kitchen. How many times have I told you? So on and so forth. So we're stuck with that feeling of, now we've got to be on guard to life. So this storyteller has a real core foundation that we must resist what we are actually experiencing. Now, therapy is a very important phase. AA is a very important phase, but it's what I call the management phase. And oh my goodness, that can thin cloud banks, that can help you understand, it can get you back, into your life. But true healing happens through engagement, through curiosity about what we are experiencing. And even if your listeners are hearing this and then they don't do anything about it, there's something that's beginning to move inside of them. And a key part of beginning to come into full curiosity about what you're experiencing right now is to create a relationship with resistance. We don't bash our way back into the world. We don't try to get rid of the cloud bank. Curiosity doesn't need anything to be any different than what it is. And when I look back at my awakening, I would open and then I would close. And I would close for a long time and I would hate myself, and then I would open a little bit and I would close. And slowly and surely I got interested in the closing. And more quickly I would come back to the opening until I found that I was living in the opening. And at times I would visit the closing. But then I would get very curious, whether it was dread or whether it was loneliness or the no way out place in the middle of the night or just deep despair or rage or anger, to get curious about that. But if you can't do that right now, get curious about resistance. That's the protector.
Well, thank you, Mary. That was absolutely a perfect description. What I'm hearing you say is that it is a gentleness to bring to ourselves,
Yes.
a loving kindness, that it's not going to happen overnight, and be patient with ourselves, and slowly but surely, as you say, we'll open, we'll close, and then one day we'll find ourselves more open than usual. And that is the process, and that is the way. Yes. How beautiful.
Yes.
How beautiful.
Yeah, and you become very curious. What's in the way is the way. The more you can sense that your home is this moment, and then you recognize maybe 2 hours later that the cloud bank has come in again, and you use your body a lot, and you've got a knot in your stomach, or you've got a lump in your throat, or you've got a splitting headache or something like that. Then you get curious about that. What's in the way is the way. And slowly and surely I call it becoming a tightness detective. I love that. You become interested when you close again. You don't make it bad or wrong, but you know life is showing you something. There's a little thing that came all in one fell swoop as I was writing this book. Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up, so it can open up to be freed up, so you can show up for life.
Absolutely. When I was reading your book, it was so fantastically laid out, where it encouraged the reader to really engage in the process of what was in the way, meaning the problems in their life, to look at it, to absorb it, to own it.
Right.
It was so beautifully laid out from the beginning of the book right to the very end of the book. So I encourage everybody and all, as Donald Neil Walsh pointed out, that it was a book that he wished he had when he was growing up. Donald Neil Walsh being Conversations of God, the author of the book. Yes, so what do you feel that you would like to share about the book that is very dear to you and very important?
Well, I would like everybody to come sit on the moon with me.
Uh-huh.
And I have wonderful lazy boy recliners up there. They're very comfortable. And, just settle in there. And then you look across at this beautiful home of ours and the exquisiteness of it. I mean, my goodness, you look over at Mars and it's red and rock and beautiful in its own right. And you look at the moon, brown and dust, and that it's beautiful in its own right. But you look at the earth, and here are these towering clouds and fields of wheat that dance in the wind, and majestic icebergs, and zebras and giraffes and ladybugs and beetles that put the artists to shame about how exquisitely colorful they are, and baby dolphins and coral. Oh my God, all the color and coral. We live in magical mystery. And then see that most of the people on this planet walk around with clouds around their head. They don't see the sacredness of this moment. They don't see the absolute exquisiteness of a dewdrop. My God, it took the whole universe in order to create a dewdrop. One of the things I do in my retreats is we do a food meditation, and let's say it's a strawberry we're working with, and I say, you think you're holding a strawberry in your hand. You're holding the whole universe in your hand. And I take them through the whole process of what it took to create this strawberry, all the way from the Big Bang to me going to the grocery store to pick up the strawberry and bring it to the retreat. We are part of this interconnected web of intelligent beingness. And I believe that we are in an evolutionary shift, and it's happening in consciousness now. And it's an evolutionary shift where we're waking back up to life. We are coming, more and more of us, out of our cloud bank and actually connecting for moments, and a moment matters. Remember, we have lived inside of this cloud bank, most of us, for decades, but just a moment of coming back matters. And those accumulate over time. And then you become curious about your cloud bank, and your cloud bank thins. And here we are sitting on the moon, seeing that all over the planet, there's more and more people that their cloud banks are thinning, and they can see other people. They can meet people in their heart. One of my favorite things to do is to go shopping, because usually whatever store I'm in, I'm usually, not always, but usually the only person that is really, truly there. And as I connect with people like the grocery store clerk, just with seeing her through my aware heart, I can bring her back to the place that she may have been grumpy, before I came in, to be with her. And now she's open again. we can make a difference. And that's chapter 11 is called The Song of the Heart. It's the last chapter. And it really is about that this world right now is truly at war with itself. There's so many wars that are happening. There are so many men that are raping and killing women. There are so many children that are starving. There are so many people that are plotting to, actions full of greed. This all comes from the cloud bank. It all comes from the belief that you're separate and you're in charge. And that's our heartache. And we, each one of us, one person at a time, can make a difference.
And that's why it's so important that each and every one of us wake up to not attaching ourselves to the stories of our lives, coming into that of the liveness within ourselves so we can make a difference. Even if it's a small, tiny difference, it is a difference.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a small, tiny difference, really, in my world. You know, that moment that you meet the grocery store clerk, that you connect being to being, that is a moment that the whole collective mind is lifted a little bit more. The cloud bank is thinned a little bit more, and it is entirely possible. I mean, it is, I also broke my own arm once. I was drunk. I was mad at myself. I went to hit the bed. It was a 4-poster bed with a comforter over it, and there was a board across the bottom, and I just kept on hitting that board because I felt it was so far beyond self-hate. It was revulsion. And of course I woke up with a swollen arm the next day and went to the doctor, and I had fractured this bone here. Now, as I discovered how to be curious about this judger, and I gave it a name, and it's really important that it can help a lot to give these parts a name. And I used to give all my scared part a name, my judger a name, my lonely one a name. Now I call them all little one. Oh, little one, you're here. But as I was able to be curious, in fact, the first thing I did was that I started carrying a notebook around because I was, oh my God, I couldn't believe how unmerciful I was with myself. This extreme judger had totally run my life. So much so that I wasn't even worth living, And so I'd carry a notebook around, and when I would catch it saying something, I would write it down. And then I came home and put it on a big piece of newsprint, on my wall, and I drew a circle, and I drew spokes. And in the center, I put the heart with a S in it for the self, for who we really are. And then on all these spokes, I put all of these voices of the judger that caused me to leave my true center and live on the outside of the wheel. Can you imagine what it would be like to live on the outside of a wheel of your car? It's very, very uncomfortable. But there is a center when you come in when you see what's on these spokes, whether you do this with fear or you do this with loneliness, or you find somebody that you can speak these to that can receive them. When you start getting them outside of yourself, something begins to happen. And that extreme judger inside of me evolved into compassion as my deep fear evolved into trust, and as my deep despair evolved into the knowing I'm not alone.
How beautiful. Thank you. What would you like to share about your book that most people can get out of it after they read it? What would you want them to take away from your book?
There are 3 qualities of consciousness. Unconsciousness, the cloud bank we lived in, is all about fixing and trying and judging and doing and getting rid of and rising above and managing. And all of that can make our cloud bank a little thinner at times, but then it gets thick again. consciousness has three core qualities. Curiosity, the ability to be really interested in what is. Oh, I'm so anxious about the meeting. Oh, anxiousness is here. Feel the difference in that. In one, you are identified with this struggling self that feels it's got to do life and do life right, and it doesn't feel it ever has. Then, that's curiosity. The second is the heart. It's not the mushy thing that we think of at the heart as the heart. The heart is our main brain. Science has shown that. This is our main brain. And for most of us, we turned this brain off and we ran away to our head, giving it a task it was never meant to do, which was to be in charge of life. This aware heart is connected to everything. And there's techniques in the book about how to be curious. There's techniques in the book about how to turn this heart back on in very safe ways so that we can begin to become spacious. When I began to become spacious around the dread, and it took me a while to learn how to turn towards it and explore it, and then let it be there so it could pass through me, and we come back to the free-flowing aliveness that we are. And the third is soft belly. Soft belly, it is a guarantee that most people hold their belly tight because they hold their breath, because they had to get away from what they were experiencing when they were young. And so when we begin to use our belly as our biofeedback mechanism to know when the belly's tight, we're caught in the world of struggle, and we can soften our belly, and that opens up our breath again. I think in every single one of my books, I have a lot that I've said about breath, because it is about breathing ourselves back into our hearts. And if that interests people, I have created 3 cards. And again, they can email me at awaken@maryo'malley.com, and we will send them these beautiful cards. One is a question mark, one is a heart, and one says soft belly. So you have these visual representations in your life to remind yourself to be curious and spacious and breathe into what you're experiencing rather than identifying with it or falling into it.
Well, Mary, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to speak with you. Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much.
It has been my joy, Victoria.
And from the art of conscious living, please do take care of yourselves and take care of others.